Have you ever felt like the moment you stop letting someone control you, they suddenly switch strategies? When a manipulator realizes you won't bend to their will, they don't give up. They evolve. And what they do next, it's dirtier than anything they tried before. It's like a spider spinning its web quietly in the corner, ignored by the fly that thinks it's safe. Or like a hunter crouched in the trees, waiting for the deer to drop its guard. Just like that, they wait, they smile, they act calm. But underneath the surface, they're already planning their next move. Because when they lose control of you, they try to control the story around you. Because once they can't manipulate you, you have a choice: fall for their tricks or rise beyond them. And when you rise, that's when the panic sets in. The moment you stop needing their approval, they'll regret ever trying to control you, because your strength exposes everything they tried to hide. So how do you recognize when someone's manipulation turns into something darker? And more importantly, how do you stop it from dragging you back in? Stick with me, because what you're about to learn might change the way you respond forever. Let's dive in. Number 1. They try to shame you publicly. Let's talk about one of the most calculated toxic tactics manipulative people use: public shaming when private control no longer works. This is what happens when they realize they can't control you behind closed doors. When their guilt trips, gaslighting, or silent treatment stop having an effect, they take it up a notch. They move the stage from private to public, hoping that the fear of being judged, ridiculed, or humiliated will make you fold. Here's the truth. When private manipulation fails, they move to public humiliation to control you through fear of judgment. They can't convince you in private anymore, so they try to destroy your confidence in front of others. They'll mock you in meetings, make jokes at your expense in group settings, subtly question your intelligence, your loyalty, or your competence where other people can hear, and when you confront them, they'll act innocent. Relax, I was only joking, or you're reading too much into it. But you're not. You feel the sting, you recognize the shift, and deep down, you know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to shrink you in the eyes of others because they failed to shrink you in your own. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Marcus Aurelius said, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the truth." And Carl Jung added, "Shame is a soul-eating emotion." Together, those ideas are powerful. The moment you give more weight to someone's public opinion than to your private truth, you give them control over your peace. Shame only has power when you believe it. But the truth can't be destroyed, not by whispers, not by crowds. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Claire, used to work under a manager who tried every subtle trick in the book. He couldn't intimidate her one-on-one. She was too calm, too grounded, too self-aware. So he started undermining her in front of others. In meetings, he'd cut her off mid-sentence. He'd roll his eyes when she shared ideas. He once even joked, "We should give Claire a trophy for working late twice this month." Everyone laughed, but she felt the punch. Still, she didn't lash out. She didn't shrink. She let the silence hang, then calmly responded, "Working late isn't a badge, it's a system failure." The room went quiet. She didn't shame him back. She held her ground. That was the day the room saw through him. So how do you deal with someone who tries to shame you publicly? First, don't let it rattle your sense of worth. Second, resist the urge to retaliate. Stand firm with calm clarity. And third, trust that truth reveals itself, even if not immediately. At the end of the day, you don't need to match their cruelty with more noise. Just let your quiet strength speak for itself, because when shame doesn't stick, they lose their power. Number 2, they play the victim. Let's talk about one of the dirtiest tricks manipulators use when they realize they can no longer control you. They start playing the victim. This is what happens when you don't fold, when you start setting boundaries, and when you stop accepting their guilt trips and pressure. They know you're no longer easy to influence, so now they flip the narrative. Suddenly, you're the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the problem. And they become the misunderstood, mistreated victim, spinning the story just enough to make others question your character. Here's the truth. If you won't submit, they pretend you're the aggressor. This twist isn't about truth, it's about control. They know they've lost power over you, so now they try to win sympathy from everyone else. They act wounded, they exaggerate, they twist your firmness into cruelty and your boundaries into betrayal. And they do it all with one goal in mind: to discredit your strength and make you look like the villain. Because if they can't manipulate you, they'll manipulate how others see you. This is where Stoic wisdom clears the fog. Epictetus said, "He who blames others has a long way to go on his journey." And whoever said, "When a person can no longer manipulate you, they will try to manipulate how others see you," wasn't wrong. The Stoic path isn't about controlling how others perceive you, it's about mastering how you respond. When someone plays the victim to make you look like the bad guy, remember, truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand still. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Lauren, was in a long-term relationship where she always gave more than she received. When she finally started standing up for herself, saying no, setting limits and choosing her peace, her partner didn't take it well. He didn't argue. He didn't confront. Instead, he told mutual friends, "I don't know what happened to Lauren. She's become so cold, so distant." He painted her strength as selfishness. He played the victim perfectly. But Lauren didn't chase after the approval of others. She didn't defend herself in every room she wasn't in. She focused on her own healing, and in time, the people who mattered saw the truth without her needing to say a word. So, how do you respond when someone weaponizes victimhood against you? First, stay calm. Don't feed the drama. Second, stand firm in your truth. You don't owe everyone your side of the story. Your actions will speak louder. And third, don't shrink just because someone is uncomfortable with your strength. Their story may be louder, but yours is real. At the end of the day, when someone has to pretend they're the victim just to make you look like the enemy, you've already taken your power back. Keep it. Walk forward. Let their fiction collapse under the weight of your truth. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3. They start spreading subtle lies. Let's talk about one of the most cowardly tactics a manipulator uses once they lose control. They start spreading subtle lies. These aren't always outright fabrications. No, these lies are crafted carefully. They twist your words, imply things you never said, and drop vague, suggestive comments meant to make others second-guess you. They don't say, "You're a bad person." They say, "I don't know, something just feels off about them lately." They don't accuse you directly, they plant seeds, and they hope others will do the dirty work of watering them. Here's the truth. They'll distort facts and use vague language to erode your reputation slowly. Because now that they can't control how you see yourself, they try to control how others see you. It's no longer about manipulation, it's about sabotage. They want to isolate you. They want people to question your integrity, your intentions, your character. And they know they don't need proof to do it. just enough whispers, enough doubt, enough silence in the right moments. This is where Stoic clarity becomes your compass. Seneca said, "The truth is simple, lies require complication." And Mark Twain added, "A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes." That's exactly how this tactic works, by exploiting how fast gossip spreads and how slowly truth walks. But the Stoic doesn't panic. They don't chase every rumor. They know that truth, while slower, stands taller. And in the end, it's the only thing that doesn't collapse under pressure. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Eric, was working at a company where he turned down a request from a colleague to cut corners on a project. The colleague didn't like that. Over the next few weeks, subtle comments started floating around the office. "Eric's been acting really territorial lately. I heard he's difficult to work with." No one ever said these things directly to him, but they found their way into rooms he wasn't in. Eric didn't panic. He didn't storm around demanding explanations. He stayed consistent in his work, kept his boundaries firm, and let his actions speak louder than rumors. And over time, the lies lost their power, because the people who mattered could see the truth for themselves. So how do you respond when someone starts distorting reality around you? First, don't chase every lie. That's what they want. Second, let your actions speak. Truth doesn't need backup dancers. And third, trust that time will expose what intention tries to hide. At the end of the day, someone who has to lie about you just to feel in control already knows the truth favors you. Let them complicate things. You just keep living simply, honestly, and powerfully. The truth doesn't have to be loud, it just has to last. Number 4, they isolate you from others. Let's talk about one of the most calculated moves manipulators make when they feel their grip slipping. They start trying to isolate you. But they don't do it by physically removing you. They do it socially, psychologically. They begin planting quiet doubts in the minds of your friends, co-workers, or family. A whisper here, a loaded comment there. It's subtle at first, just enough to shift energy, create discomfort, and make people pull back from you without even realizing why. Here's the truth. They try to turn others against you so you feel cornered, because isolation makes it easier to break your resolve. The fewer people you feel connected to, the easier you are to control. They want you emotionally vulnerable, second-guessing yourself, and wondering why the room feels colder than it used to. It's not about truth or fairness, it's about power. And the best way to take someone's power is to make them feel like they have no one left in their corner. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes your armor. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." And Machiavelli, on the darker side of strategy, revealed the game. Control the narrative, and you control the person. That's exactly what they're doing, trying to manipulate the story being told about you so that they control not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Jenna, was part of a tight-knit project team. She started speaking up more, setting boundaries, and pushing back on unrealistic expectations. One of her teammates, threatened by her confidence, began quietly turning others against her. He'd say things like, "Jenna's really intense lately, huh?" Or, "She's been hard to talk to these days." The comments were small, but they added up. People started pulling back. Meetings felt different. Jenna could feel the shift, but instead of panicking, she stayed grounded. She didn't confront anyone with accusations. She kept showing up with integrity, kept contributing value, and eventually, those who mattered saw through the manipulation. The teammate's strategy unraveled the moment people compared his whispers to her actions. So how do you deal with someone who tries to isolate you? First, be aware. Recognize the tactic before it works. Second, double down on your integrity. Your consistency becomes the proof they can't erase. Third, strengthen ties with people who reflect your values. You don't need an army, just a few real ones who know your heart. At the end of the day, isolation is a trap built on illusion. The people meant for you won't be swayed by cheap narratives. Stay grounded, stay true, and let the truth outlast the whispers. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a thank God and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. They use guilt to make you comply. Let's talk about one of the most emotionally draining weapons in the manipulator's arsenal. They use guilt to make you comply. They won't argue with logic. They won't discuss things openly. Instead, they go straight for your heart, your empathy, your conscience. It sounds like, after everything I've done for you, or, I guess none of that mattered, huh? It's not about love. It's not about fairness. It's emotional blackmail, designed to make you feel ashamed for having boundaries, opinions, or independence. Here's the truth. They guilt you because they know it works. They don't need to raise their voice or make a scene. Just a disappointed tone and a few loaded words are enough to make you fold. They know you care. They know you're thoughtful. And instead of respecting that, they exploit it. You end up apologizing for things you shouldn't, doing things you don't want to, and suppressing your own needs just to avoid hurting them. But if someone truly valued you, they wouldn't weaponize your compassion. They'd honor it. This is where Stoic wisdom gives us strength. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And another voice, just as powerful, said, "Guilt is a weapon used by those too weak to lead, yet too afraid to be left behind." Guilt, when used by manipulators, isn't about healing, it's about control. If they can't guide you with honesty, they'll try to steer you with shame. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Danielle, had a relative who always made her feel guilty for choosing herself. When Danielle decided to take a job out of state, her aunt didn't say, "Congratulations." She said, "I guess family doesn't matter to you anymore." When Danielle couldn't attend every gathering or fulfill every favor, the aunt would reply with, "Wow, after everything I've done for you." It worked for a while. Danielle kept overextending, saying yes when she meant no, and slowly draining herself. Until one day she paused and asked herself, "Would I ever speak to someone I love the way she speaks to me?" The answer changed everything. She stopped responding out of guilt and started acting from self-respect. The shift wasn't loud, but it was powerful. So, how do you respond when someone uses guilt to control you? First, recognize the script. It's not love, it's manipulation. Second, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm afraid not to? And third, set boundaries with clarity, not cruelty. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they once did you a favor. At the end of the day, guilt is only powerful when you believe you've done something wrong. But setting boundaries isn't wrong, it's wise. And those who love you won't make you feel bad for taking care of your own soul. Number 6. They try to destroy your confidence. Let's talk about one of the cruelest tactics manipulators turn to when they've lost control. They try to destroy your confidence. This isn't just about winning an argument or making you feel bad in the moment. It's deeper. It's systematic. It's subtle at first. Small jabs, underhanded remarks, questions disguised as concern. But it all leads to one goal: to chip away at your self-belief until you stop trusting yourself altogether. Here's the truth. Since they can't own you, they attack your self-worth so you no longer believe in your ability to stand alone. If they can make you doubt your judgment, your strength, your intuition, they win without lifting a finger. You'll stop making bold choices. You'll hesitate more. You'll look for their approval again, and that's exactly what they want, for you to come crawling back, not because they earned your trust, but because they shattered your sense of self. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your defense. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And Naval Ravikant said it just as sharply. The first step in silencing a strong mind is to convince it that it's broken. But you're not broken. You're just under psychological attack by someone who fears your strength, because it reminds them of everything they lack. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Chris, was in a relationship where anytime he achieved something, his partner would downplay it. If he got a promotion, she'd say, "Must be nice when you know the right people." If he made a decision for himself, she'd ask, "Are you sure that's the smart move?" At first, it seemed harmless. But over time, it added up. Chris started second-guessing everything. He went from being decisive and confident to unsure and quiet. Until one day, a close friend said something simple: "You've changed, and not in a good way." That comment was a mirror. Chris realized the person he had become wasn't him. It was who he'd been turned into. That's when he drew the line. He walked away. It took time, but he rebuilt. And with every day that passed, the fog lifted and his confidence returned, not because someone handed it to him, but because he remembered who he was without the noise. So, how do you handle someone who tries to erode your confidence? First, recognize it's intentional. Their comments aren't accidents, they're calculated. Second, protect your mental space. Write down your wins, your values, your strengths. Remind yourself often. And third, surround yourself with people who speak truth into you, not fear. At the end of the day, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from knowing who you are even when others try to make you forget. Don't give them that power. Reclaim your voice. Rebuild your strength. And remember, no one can destroy what you refuse to surrender. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 7. They offer fake reconciliation. Let's talk about one of the most deceptive moves a manipulator will make. They offer fake reconciliation. This is the final play when everything else has failed. You've stood your ground, set your boundaries, and broken their influence. So now, they flip the script. Suddenly they're kind again, apologetic, gentle. They say things like, "I've been doing a lot of thinking," or "I miss how things used to be." It feels real. It feels sincere. But underneath the softness is the same agenda. Control. Here's the truth. When nothing else works, they act kind again, only to regain your trust and start the cycle over. This isn't about healing, it's about resetting the game. They want back in, not to make amends, but to start where they left off. Just smarter this time, more careful, more charming. They'll mirror your growth, pretend they've changed, and promise things will be different. But the moment you let your guard down, the old patterns return. slowly, then suddenly. This is where Stoic clarity becomes vital. Epictetus once said, "He who does not observe deceit is not truly wise." And there's a quote that cuts even deeper. "Be careful who you let back in. The snake only sheds its skin to grow larger." What both remind us is simple. Wisdom isn't just about forgiving others, it's about recognizing patterns. A changed tone doesn't always mean a changed heart. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Naomi, had cut off a manipulative ex who drained her emotionally for years. For months, she stuck to her decision. No contact, healing, growth. Then one day, he showed up again, apologizing, saying he'd been going to therapy, admitting he'd been wrong. Naomi was cautious but curious. She let him in slowly. For a while, things seemed better. But then came the small criticisms, the guilt trips, the passive control. It was the same behavior in a new disguise, and Naomi realized he hadn't changed. He had just adapted. So how do you handle someone who offers fake reconciliation? First, take your time. Real change is consistent, not dramatic. Second, look at actions, not words. Are they respecting your boundaries or just trying to soften them? And third, ask yourself, do I want this person in my life, or am I just tempted by the version they're pretending to be? At the end of the day, not every apology deserves an open door. Protect your peace. Forgive if you choose, but don't forget the pattern, because when someone shows you who they are over and over again, the wise thing isn't to hope they'll change, it's to believe them and then walk away stronger. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.